All right, in this lesson, what we're going to be doing is adding all of our static meshes to the inner portion of our map. In other words, the arena section of it. And we're going to actually get this area complete. The first thing that we need to do is go ahead and add some lights into the scene so that we can see things just a little bit better while we're working. Now, these are just going to be working lights only for the simple fact that we have a lighting section a little bit later on where we'll then focus on setting up all of our lighting properly. So, Logan, go ahead and do what you need to do to make it so that we can see a little bit better.
Okay, I'll take this first light and drop its brightness by half, and then I'll duplicate it 2 more times. So dim it down a little. Let me find it in the top view. Control W, drag it to the other corner of the top. Control W again, then from a front view, let me drag that down almost to the ground, maybe just above that bottom pillar there. So that way we'll have illumination from the bottom as well. And I'll go ahead and rebuild lighting. Okay.
All right, so yeah, that's a lot better, a lot easier to see what's going on.
Okay. So
let's go ahead and start now by putting in all of our walkways all the way around the actual arena itself.
Okay. So to do that, we'll load up, we'll use static meshes for the walkways. So we'll load up the static mesh browser, open up Bastion Hardware, and I'll grab, let's say, ramp 02.
So let's spend just a second and talk about this static mesh browser right here. As we said in the very beginning of this entire VTM right here, static meshes was nothing more than geometry that has been modeled in another 3D package, textured and lit, and then brought over into Unreal Ed, or at least has been packaged up into packages that we can then load in and go through using this browser right here, the package, and find the one that we're interested in, and then load it into our scene.
Right. Now, this button would allow you to throw it right into the scene somewhere, or if you have it selected in the static mesh browser, it will appear in your right-click menu, which is how I prefer to add them. So with this ramp 02 selected, I'll close out the static mesh browser for now. I'll go relatively close to where I want to start adding the static mesh, right-click, and say, add that static mesh there. I'll add it in, and let me drag it out and line it up a little bit, centered on the view there. And of course it'll take 2 of those to actually span that, so I'll use Control W, grab a second one, and there we've got the start of the first walkway.
Very simple.
Okay, so there's one. We need 8 more for the top ring alone. So I'm going to go back, and from these 2, let me verify that they're lined up correctly. Okay, and let me, before I forget, let me check them in from a front view. Yeah, I need to move them down to keep them centered. You don't want it sticking up above the BSP. Okay, so now we'll go ahead with both of these selected. We'll open up the group browser again, and we'll create a new group, and we can call this one Walkways. Okay, select that Walkways group and add these 2 static meshes to that group. Now, when we go and, let me move this out of the way a little bit. When we go to start duplicating these, we can quickly, as the same thing as we did when we actually duplicated the brushes all the way around, we can keep reselecting them from the group's browser. So with those 2 selected, I'll hit Control W to duplicate them, drag them back to the center, and then set their pivot to the center of the world. Pivot, place pivot, snapped here. And then I can Control right drag to rotate them. So now I've got 4 of them, covering 2, or spanning 2 of the walkways. I'll hit Select All, and there's we have a slight draw bug on showing the selection of static meshes, so I'll often use perspective to verify certain selections. Alright, so now with 2 spanning walkways selected, I'll Control W to duplicate again, zoom in a little so I can center these back up, then center their pivot to the center of the world. Then I can Control right drag to rotate them again.
That's very simple. I mean, it's just so cool.
So, again, using our ever handy group browser, we can select all of them. Control W, zoom in a little so that I can line them up again, and then place their pivot like that. Okay, I left it. Center of the world, pivot, snapped here. And rotate those around. And there we have walkways spanning all the way across.
That was fast and easy.
So now we need those same 8 to that lower ring, so we can go back to our group browser one last time, select all 8, Control W to duplicate, and make sure that they center up again. And then from front view, I'll just Control drag them straight down. And if they line up, yeah, I moved them a little, so center them. Centered, centered, and there we have walkways for both levels.
Very nice.
I'll go ahead and close out the groups browser. Okay, so that takes care of our inner circular walkways. Next, we want to go to the bottom and add little walkways across out to our little to the start of the pillars. Now, I could just duplicate one more since we're going to use this static mesh for the walkways across here, but I kind of want to keep the groups clean and don't want to duplicate out and keep inside this group. I'm just going to add a new static mesh of that walkway here. So I'll simply right-click and say I still have that one selected from the static mesh browser. So I'll add a new one here. And then, that way, if I went to the groups browser, this would not be part of the other group if I ever needed to adjust or make another duplication or whatever. So let me go down, and I'll drag it to the center. But you see that it doesn't quite fit. And if you added 2, that would be too many. So what I'm going to have to do is scale it out just a little bit. I'll grab, under Draw Scale 3D, I'll grab the second axis and set it from 1 to 1.44.
Hey, very nice.
I might have to drop my grid a little to get that snap just right. Let me try 4. Zoom in here, and that's very close. That should be right about there. Let me zoom in from a front view just to check the height. Move it down just a little bit. And there, now I've actually got the walkway across, and it fits. Now, of course, there's only going to be 4 of these, just like there was only 4 pillars, so I'm not going to worry about grouping them before I duplicate all the remaining 3. So with this one still selected, I'm going to hit Control W to duplicate it, and let me go move my, snap that back up, move my grid back up to 16 to make this a little bit easier. And I'll zoom in a little, snap my pivot to the center, and then Control drag to rotate. So there's 1, Control W to duplicate it, snap it back, pivot, snap to the center, rotate, duplicate, realign, pivot snap, and a final rotate. So with that, you can see we now have 4 walkways all the way across.
Starting to look interesting. All right, so now I guess we could go ahead and turn our attention up towards the top and go ahead and do the top ramps now.
Okay, so add the actual ramps that will allow people to walk from this outer ring to where they would get off from the elevator.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for that static mesh, I'm going to need to pull the static mesh browser back up, and I'm going to be using ramp 03. And I'll simply close that out, and I'll start from, over where we first put in our door, which would be, I'll find myself just a second.
There it is.
So I'll start from here. I'm going to add the mesh first, but we're going to have to do a little bit of editing on these brushes to actually add a solid piece of geometry for this brush to start from. But for now, I'm just going to rough it in, get its general location in place.
You mean for the static mesh to start from?
Right.
Just more like a connecting point.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and add that ramp, and I'll need to rotate it a little, and rotate it pointing towards the center. And then I'll move it out and center it up so that, I'll probably have to move it up a little bit, so I'll go to my front view, zoom in on it, and then drag it up so that the bottom is somewhat centered. See how close I can get in there? But the edge of that comes to about there and centers up with the other mesh, which should also conveniently center inside this 32 unit thick brush once we get some solid brush back across there. But first, that's in place. It's centered along this axis, so we should be able to duplicate it and move it forward. Let me go to the front view, make this a little bit easier, and drag it up. And snap it in place. Let me check, verify that they snap together right. Okay, that looks good. So we have the start of the first piece.
Now let's see how close you were on our center ring up there.
Not too bad.
Not too bad at all.
Okay, so let's see. I could move it down, and while I'm at it, then I'll rebuild lights and geometry, so I can get an idea of how the shadows are working. Let me go back to that where we added that ring brush. Select it. I can simply Control, drag it down, and let me do a quick rebuild all, so we can see what we've got so far.
Okay.
And there we go. Let me deselect that brush. Deselect that face. Okay.
Looks like you're going to need to do a little vertex editing up there in a few minutes.
Let's see. I'll do that, but first let me go and duplicate this ramp, get 3 more of those to go all the way around, and then I'll have an idea of exactly where each vertex on this brush would need to go.
Absolutely.
So I'll grab both of these. Again, you could group them if you wanted to, if you for some reason thought you wanted to go back and grab them again, but it's only 4 like the bottom, so I'll just leave it as is and begin duplicating. So my grid's set to 16. I'll duplicate, center it back up, and then move the pivot to the center. Pivot, snapped here. And start rotating just like...
Can you then duplicate the other 2 and then...
Grab 4 of them?
Yeah, so that you got 4 real quick.
Okay,
there.
so I can grab all 4 of those, Control W, move them back, place their pivots at the center, pivot, snap here, and then this leaves only 1 rotate to grab the final 2. Let me zoom in out. Let's see. Yeah, those should be... That looks good. So there. Now I've got all 4 of them in place.
Very nice. Now, do we want to go ahead and do our editing on that ring right there where the player is going to get off from the elevator first?
That sounds good.
Okay.
You can see the where these vertices are, it doesn't quite match up with the edges, and it doesn't look that great without them matching up. So what I'm going to do is grab this ring that makes up the little walkway here. I'm going to enter, let me grab this little green scroll bar, scroll back up to the top so I can get to vertex editing. And then, let's see, what does large vertices look like? That might help. So I'm going to just use Control-Alt and select these 2. You notice if I look in a, move my perspective around. Guess it's not that important, but there, you can see I have both of those vertices selected. So now I can Control and drag those out. I might drag it a unit past where those are.
Yeah, it looks good.
And do the same for the other side, Control-Alt, and then I can Control drag out. And continuing on for the remaining 3 sides. Let's see. It's pretty close. Grab that.
Yeah, we're not going to be worrying about ultra perfection in this particular level right here for the simple fact that that takes time, and we don't have lots of time.
Alright, so let me grab that. That pretty close, and actually I'm going to turn the large vertices back off so I can get a better idea of where that vertex is going. Move it out a little, and move that one out.
Okay, now a quick rebuild. All will show us how that looks.
Now maybe some of those I could have been just a hair more exact, but that'll get the idea across for having a complete face for the static meshes to join to.
Absolutely. Now the next thing that we're going to need to go, that looks really good. Next thing that we're going to need to go and do now is fix where these guys join in back on the outer walkways of the arena. Yeah, right there. They're just kind of floating at the moment.
Okay, let me take a look at that. There's the brush that we initially subtracted out. Well, the one below it.
The one below it.
All right, here's what I was talking about. The wireframe perspective can get very useful here because I can't tell. We have 2 exactly brushes that are shaped exactly alike, but on top of each other, so it's hard to grab one from the top. Whereas if I go from a perspective, I can easily see that I want that one. Then I can go back to a shaded view. And so we see that that's what we subtracted out, and we see we subtracted that piece out. Now, we could go and add an extra brush in there, but I'm thinking of just replacing these subtraction brushes with new ones that are sized a little differently. So I'm going to go and...
What happens if you... I mean, I know we can do that. I'm just being curious, though. Could that have been scaled in?
You could scale or vertex edit it, yes.
Or vertex edit, okay.
Let's see. If you want to try on this one, just to do a quick vertex edit. Now, if you wanted to actually recreate this brush, the width, the long ways width is 512, and the width this way is right now is 384. If you wanted to size it in so you'd have 16 units on the edge, I would make this about 368 units wide, and then move it even with this wall, and you'll be left with a 16 unit bar across here. For the sake of time, we're going to see how well vertex editing works.
It'll work great.
So pull that in, and just to get a quick view, let me do geometry only. And there you've got a bar that connects to it.
Okay.
So that, I might just do that all the way around since it's only 4. Just grab those brushes and vertex edit them in. Again, if you wanted, you could use a 368 unit wide cube and then replace all these. Delete them and then resubtract.
Okay. So yeah, let's just go ahead and knock out the other sides real quick.
So I know that the brush is there, so let me switch over to a perspective wireframe, grab it, go back to shaded so I can see what I'm doing. Then maybe go from the top view, still in vertex editing mode, Control-Alt, drag over all 4 of those vertices, and then pull them back in 16 units.
So fast.
So, 2 brushes left. Grab this one, move the camera over, wireframe perspective, that brush, normal, zoom in a little, Control-Alt, drag, 1 in, and move on to the final brush. So let me grab these, 4 more vertices, 1 snap. I'll go back to my camera mode, deselect, and let me do build all. So we can see what this looks like now.
Very cool.
So now, everywhere that these ramps connect in to the ring walkway around here, we actually have some geometry for them to connect to, and on both sides. So that way we have a completely flat face for these ramps to connect to.
Very nice. All right, well, while we're dealing with these walkways so much on the outer edges of the arena, how about we go ahead and throw some static meshes, some decorations, if you will, all the way around, some sort of pipes, some support columns that are made up of pipes, if you will.
Okay. Well, I'll need to load those out of a different package, so I'll load up the static mesh browser again, hit open, and we'll go and grab either
from comp.
So okay, the first set we'll grab is from comp. Open up that package.
And up under miscellaneous. Yeah, okay, you know where to go.
Miscellaneous, and we'll grab.
There we
that
go.
looks interesting. So we'll go ahead and leave that one selected. I'll close out the static mesh browser for now, and we're going to add these supports here, then one in between, and then one on the ground level going up to the bottom ramp. So I'll start at the top. I'll right-click and add one of those. We'd rather have it vertical, so let me go find a good view to rotate that in. Let's see how the front. Yeah, the front will work good. I'll control right drag, throw it vertical. Now let me see, I could kind of control right drag in the top a little bit more to kind of
bisect that angle right there.
Right. And then simply move it up, and it should match pretty well.
Oh, look at that. Very nice.
So just set that in place. Let's see if you want to set that right there. Looks pretty good. Okay.
Okay, now we want to go ahead and add 2 more things.
So I'm going to bring the static mesh browser back up. This time we'll load up, I think, the ShipTech package.
Yeah, the ShipTech hardware.
And from inside there,
up under miscellaneous again.
Grab miscellaneous and grab
pipe O2CS.
So, wrong thing selected. Miscellaneous pipe O2CS.
That's the one.
There we go. With that one selected, close out the static mesh browser, right click, add that static mesh, and same as before. Let me go in with that one selected. See, go ahead and this time from the side view, depending on how it's oriented. Let me go and from the side view I can rotate it till it's vertical. From the front view, I can set the height correct, and then from the top view I'll set these to the sides of that main pillar. So, what do you think about that? Looks good for the first one? Maybe a little closer?
It's up to you. Just, something that...
Alright. Control W to duplicate it over to the other side. Let's see. Let me lower my grid setting a little so I can get these lined up a little bit better. Let's line that one up behind it a little.
Yeah.
Bring it out. Bring it out. Okay. That's good enough for now. Okay, so we have those supports in place. But now we need to go ahead and get 8 more of those to go all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and select those 3. Bring up the groups browser again. And create a new group. We'll call this
Pipe supports or something.
I'll be short. SUPP.
Yeah, it's very short.
So I'll go ahead, create that new group, select it, add those 3 pipes to that group, and then I can start duplicating. So if those 3 added, I'll do Control W, and let me center them up. I'm going to set my grid back up a little bit higher. Now I can move their pivots, snap to the center, pivot, and of course, snapped. And then I can control right drag and throw these in the next corner. Go back to the groups browser, select all of them again, Control W, center them back up, and then this should be a pretty familiar process by now. Pivot, snap here, and grab those 4. Use the groups browser to grab all of them.
And one last time.
Control W, snap them back together.
At least for this level.
And place the pivot, center one last time, and rotate all those all the way around, like such. And there we have, at least for the top, 8 supports all the way around.
Now we can just easily copy that whole group and take it down 2 more times.
Select all one last time, and let me duplicate that off. Then center it up, and then I can move it down to the next level. Zoom in a little, make sure I have this centered up. Still centered there, good. Select, let's see, I still have just those 8, so let me duplicate those one last time. Center them up, and drag them down to the bottom, like such, and still centered, and that should do that. Now we've got pipe supports all the way around.
Very nice, and it's starting to look quite interesting, I must say, Logan.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. All right, well, let's go ahead now and move on to the elevator tracks. Let's turn our attention towards the center of the arena.
All right. Let me add, this might make the temp lighting look a little bright, but I'm going to, let me just move one of my lights to the center, because I need to get some better illumination in the center. And let me also change the type of this light. And we'll actually be using this a little later, but if I change the light effect to, or light, let's see. Anyway, I'm trying to get a cylindrical effect.
You're there. There you go.
And what that'll do is keep a more intense but longer cylinder of light. That way I'll keep lighting on the inside of these a little bit better. So let me rebuild lighting real quick. There, we can kind of see the insides of those more. So, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab some small kind of wire-looking meshes to run along these pillars, and those will act kind of like a track for an elevator. So let me bring up the static mesh browser. I will open up, let's see, area or abandoned hardware.
Yep, that's the one. Inside
abandoned hardware, and after it loads. Let's see, we'll grab miscellaneous or...
Oh, let's see, we're going to be up under beams actually for this one.
Okay.
And we're looking for SUP 2 beam 5-1. Yeah, there we go. Up one.
Okay. So, with those selected, I'll go ahead and close that out. I'll go all the way down to the bottom of the elevator shaft and right-click and add those on the floor. And of course, we're going to have to rotate those again. So let me take a look at a different view here. And from my front view, I can rotate those till they're vertical. Then let me zoom in on them some more. And let me move them out towards one of the pillars. And then rotate them as well so that they kind of line up even with the edge of the pillar. I think I can leave it on that large grid snap and it should work fine. So with that, let's see. Do you want to move it closer to the pillar or leave it at that?
Probably a little bit closer to the pillar.
All right, let me drop down to 8 units then. Maybe even 4. Yeah. Getting into a small mesh, need smaller grid units. So maybe a setting of about there.
Okay.
Okay, now let me go and move this up some so that it's even with the floor. And, okay, center this back up a little. Now we're going to need to duplicate this a few times to get it high enough to reach all the way through the ceiling. So with that, even with the floor, I'll go ahead and duplicate and then move it up. And let me zoom in a little so I can see where it ends. So I'll snap it even, and I'll also make sure it lines up in the top. Then I'll control and grab both of them, duplicate again, and then I'll go ahead and move these up. Oh, a little fast zooming. Now, yeah, this will go through the ceiling quite a bit, but there's a reason for that, and it won't really hurt. If I look at just the top one, and say if I move it up a little, take it out of the way, let me move the camera up to the top. You see, it doesn't quite reach to the top. We don't need much to reach to the top, and this brush is a lot longer. But even so, I'm going to go ahead and connect it down so it looks like it goes through the ceiling. The other cool thing about that is if I pull back a little and look up, it actually goes through this little cone-shaped top and then up into the ceiling again, which looks kind of cool.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm going to leave it in like that.
Excellent.
So with all those, I'm going to go down and using Control, just go and grab and reselect all of those. And last one, so we have all 4 of those selected. Now my top view, duplicate, center it up, and let's see here. Let me set my grid setting down to something else. So let me slide it all the way up to 32. That way I can center their pivot, and then I can rotate them around to another pillar. I can duplicate them, move them back, center their pivot again, rotate them around. One last duplicate, pivot snap, and then we should have all 4 of them on all 4 sides.
Okay, so now we have our tracks for the actual lift itself. Let's go ahead and add that lift in.
Okay, I'll load up the static mesh browser, and this time
this one's going to be up under the CF_DE. And it's going to be the CF_
that one.
Gale lifts.
Okay. So let me go and instead of right-clicking and adding, though, this is actually going to be an elevator, which is going to move. And in that case,
it's a mover.
Right, it's going to need to be a mover. This brush here is Add Mover. The way movers work in UT 2003 is they actually take a static mesh and make that mesh into a mover. So with this static mesh selected in the mesh browser, I can then go and click Add Mover, and if I zoom out a little, it actually added, so it is a mover. I mean, it could be drawing in a different color, but again, due to video drivers, it's drawing it as in the normal static mesh color. So let me grab that and move it down a little.
Some of you guys may actually see this as purple.
Let's see.
Which is the color it should be.
Let me zoom in a little bit and center it up. Now that's a little bit too big. Let me set the grid back to 16. Now,
time for some scaling.
Definitely need to scale this in.
So I got some numbers for you there, Logan. How about 0.17, 0.23, and 0.2? See if that works for you.
Alright, that's a much more manageable size. Now, let me get this close to the floor. Might go drop down to 8 units real quick. Grab it. Let's see. How about 4 units? And lower that.
That's good.
Right up against the floor. So there we've actually, and again, it doesn't match up 100% dead on, but still, you could hunt around in there. Let's see, maybe I could rotate it like, I don't know, just leave it.
Just kind of move it back upwards a little bit. Yeah, there you go.
Maybe something around there. So, let's see.
Yeah, I would go right around there. I mean, it's not 100% ideal, but again, we're kind of constrained on time, so they get the idea. They can go in there and play with scaling, get it to line up really well.
Right, or hunt down a different mesh you like better or something.
Yeah, this will work for now. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get the moving part out of the way. While this VTM is not a focus on the creation of movers, this is actually very easy to do. Logan, you want to go ahead and set up the keys on it?
Right. So the way this works is it's looking for, we're only going to need 2 keys, basically a position to tell it that this is where it starts, and we also need to tell it that way up there is the position where it needs to end after someone steps on it. So we can tell it, right now we could say it's on key 0. If we go and right click on it, part of its right click menu it says mover, we can set it to key 1. And now we can set it where we want it to be at key 1. So I can go ahead and move it all the way up to the lift exit where we have the little ring around there and then the ramps to get down. Center it back up a little. And let's see. Let me look at it from perspective. And that lines up pretty close.
Is that the same alignment that you had when it was down on the floor?
What do you mean? Oh, you mean top view?
Yeah, I don't know if you actually...
Yeah, that should be right.
Okay.
I moved it back over some. So that's key 1, meaning that after it starts moving, this is where it's trying to move to. So let me right-click on that and make sure we set it back to key 0 before we play, so that we make sure it starts on key 0.
Okay, very good.
One last thing, it's set to move 1 second per move in 1 second, which is a little bit fast to get all the way up there. So I want to change one property on it by right-clicking on it, bringing up its mover properties, under mover, setting move time to 2. Still kind of fast, but not as fast. So let me close that out, and that's all we need to do.
All right, cool. So now, if you want, let's go ahead and focus on, I don't know, let's say the railings.
Okay, add some railings down here.
Sounds good.
Okay, let me load up another static mesh for those.
Humanoid hardware.
Load that up.
And again, we'll be going up underneath the miscellaneous category. And it's going to be JRailing01HA.
Like such.
And there it is.
So with that selected, let me go and let's see. We're going to be adding these 2 across each open section here where there's not a walkway, and then 1 on each walkway. So let me go ahead. Since this is going to be another one of those where we need to duplicate around, I'll start by adding them across here so it's easier to see we have them lined up straight before we go to start duplicating. So let me start over here and actually add one. And let me go find that in the top view and rotate it so that's facing the right way. And let me see. Move it kind of close to the edge. Something like that looks pretty good.
Okay.
Duplicate it over so we have 2 of them. And let's see. Probably need to move one of them in a little bit. Again, we probably won't get this dead on. We'll just get it pretty close for the sake of time.
And that's good enough, actually.
So I'll grab both of those. Not that one. Have to be careful when selecting small meshes. So I'll grab both of those. Control W to duplicate them. Center them back up. Let me go ahead and set my grid up a little so it's easier to snap. So those 2 selected. Okay, here's one thing I might run into. Let me move those out of the way a little bit so I can get back to them. Notice how snapping the pivot is going to be really hard with that mover there. So let me go ahead and select it. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and hide that, just like we hid that cone in the top of the level, so that it doesn't get in my way when I try to snap the pivot. So let me scroll down just a little and hide that. And if I update the views, then it's gone. Also, let me grab this light and move it off the center just a little bit so I can see my center point. Okay, that's a little bit better. Let me go and grab these 2 duplicated meshes real quick. And that. Let me go and center those up again real quick with the grid set lower. It doesn't like snapping at that size. Snap those up. Grid up for snapping the pivot. So we'll place the pivot, snap there. Control drag that around. And let's see. Let me zoom in. That looks good. So now I can go back and yeah, we could have made a group for this. Actually, it might have helped, but at this point, let me just try and finish this off real quick. So let me grab all 4 of them so far. And with all of those selected, duplicate them, center them back up, place the pivot in the center, and then I should be able to, let's see, I got those 2, so now I need to go all the way around to those sides. And that's 4 of them. Let me go back, and now I need to move them so that they're not blocking the walkways. So I'll select the remaining meshes one last time. Those 2, and zoom in. Okay. Now, with their pivots still in the center of the world, I'll simply rotate all of them until they're on the open edges of the side of this, what's going to be a water pool. Okay, with those in place, let me grab one off the end of one of these, duplicate it again, and let's see. These are actually going to go along the side of our walkways. So let me zoom in a little bit so I can get a better idea of how it's shaping up. And let's see. A little bit hard to see, but I'll just move it to pretty close to the center.
Might need to drop your grid spacing, yeah.
Just center it up a little. And move it towards... It's a little bit tricky buried in there, but let's see. And let me try the front view and move it down a little bit. And centered up, I don't know, maybe right about there. Okay. So I'll go and let's see. Should I start a group for this one or just start duplicating it across?
To be honest with you, yeah, I'd be doing this with groups. To me, I think it'd make it a lot easier.
Alright, so I have this first one. I'll duplicate the one over for this side, and then I'll start with the groups.
That sounds good.
So duplicate this one, slide it over, and let's see. That's actually pretty close for lengthwise. Let's see. I mean, you could go in there and be exact, but that's close enough for just a general look of it. So I'll go ahead and create my group out of that. So with these, I'll create a new group and call this like railing. And I'll add both of those to railing. And then I'll go in and, let's see, we can start duplicating. So I'll zoom out and let me set my grid up and see if I can get away with 16. Duplicate those and let's see. Well, we still have some, you can see the top ramps getting in the way. We still have some of those on groups. So maybe we'd be able to, let's say, well, we don't have those top ones on groups. Let me see here. Kind of tricky to line these back up. Let me do some hiding real quick. Grab that one, and hide them out. So I can get an idea of what I'm doing here. Let's see. Turn on real time. There, let's see. And no.
Looks like we may have accidentally got something else selected that time around.
Or deselected. Because everything got deselected. And then that would have grabbed the builder brush.
Okay, so that's a builder brush up there.
Right.
For just a second, it looked like a different color.
And
yeah,
it had its pivot center, so I'm just going to move it completely out of the way. I think right-clicking, it still had its pivot in the center.
Something, if you want to demonstrate something real fast, if you want to create a group and put all of those center supports or center walkways in a group, then just hide the group real quick.
Okay.
It would be very, not the top really, but looking at all the bottom ones. Yeah.
So you're saying create a new group.
If you created a group and threw the 4 of those in there real fast, because you've already got the height correct.
So go and grab all 4 of those.
Yeah, this will make things very nice.
And add those to that group, and then...
And he just clicks the little checkbox there. They've been hidden out. And, yeah, that's very nice. Now, if you want to, real quick, you can go ahead and look back up and grab the other ones up top, and you can just go ahead and hide those the same way you did the other ramps at the very top where the elevator comes out, since you only hid some of them. You didn't hit all of them.
So hide them like normal or add them to that group?
You can just hide them like normal, since you don't have the one that's part of it. You can go back in there and unhide in a minute. There you go.
So hide all those out.
Now, this will make taking care of the bottom a whole lot faster, real quick.
Right. Zoom in a little bit. Grab both.
And again, because of redraw issues, it may be best to, check it down there. There you go.
Now, with everything out of the way...
Now it'll be a piece of cake. It's actually a very good example for those out there that are watching that are completely new to this. This could be frustrating. It's just a matter of keep in mind what you can do that might help speed things up. Like in this case right here, it was very confusing to see how things were being lined up with everything being shown, all these static meshes. And look at that, he's flying through it now.
So we should be able to throw the hide walkways group, and there we have walkways with the handrails on them.
Exactly. Very good, Logan, very good.
All right, let me go down and show all, so that I get stuff like my like those walkways above back. Though I do want to go back and re-hide the top cone and the mover, because just to keep those off of the center point.
Exactly.
So I'll hide those and those only. And there I have my walkways.
All right, very good. Okay, so let's see. We've got several different directions that we can go now. Do you want to go ahead and add the actual water down at the bottom, the fluid surface info?
Okay.
Since we're kind of working down there in that area right now.
All right. For that, I need to load up the Actor Class browser, go under Info, and underneath there, grab a fluid surface info. With that selected, I can go down and in the water pool, right-click on a face once it gives it to me, and add a fluid surface info. You notice it has a default texture on it, and we'll be setting that in just a second. First, I want to make sure it lines up and is centered up a little. And also, let's see, now we need to set some properties. See how it's not very wide yet? It doesn't completely cover the open area we have here. So I'm going to right-click on it, bring up its properties. First, under Fluid Surface Info, I'm going to go and grab the fluid X size and the fluid Y size and set those both to 100. That should make it wide enough to fill up the pool. I'm also going to set the fluid noise frequency down to 50.
And what's, just for those out there that have no clue, what does the fluid noise frequency do for us?
Well, it'll be a lot more noticeable once we get a reflection mapped texture or material on here, but it's just adjusting like how many ripples you have for the fluid surface.
Okay, so the motion effect when you're actually playing in game and you come up and encounter this.
60 probably would have worked, but 50 would bring it down just a little bit and show it maybe just a little bit better.
Okay.
So let me go and grab display. So we want to go actually get a real like water texture on here. Under skins, I'll actually add a skin to it. So we have skin 0, and under skin 0 we need to go and find a material to put on there.
Okay.
So to grab that, I'll go to the texture browser. I'll open up, let's see, fluid or...
You want default fluid?
Yeah, that sounds good. Open up default fluid and grab...
We're going to go up under shaders.
And let's see.
And fluid combiner, I believe, is the one you used.
Yeah, we'll try. That should be that one. Now, with that selected, I can close this out, and it's still selected in that browser, so I can go down where it says skins, and then that 0 that I added, I can then click Use, because it'll grab the one selected in the texture browser. And there we have, and now it's a lot easier to see. If I go and look at it now, with the real-time preview turned on, it's a little bit choppy from the recording, but you can see that you can actually see the ripple effect a lot better now.
Absolutely. All right, go ahead and turn off the real-time preview just so it doesn't bog us down too much.
Okay.
All right, so is that about everything we need to do as far as the water is concerned?
I might move it up a little because it's kind of
low.
shallow. So just Control drag it up, maybe to there. very easy to adjust later if we wanted to.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's see. What else we need to do? We need some lighting, without a doubt. We got top lights that we need to add in at and above the actual elevator shaft, and we also need to add some lights all the way around all of our little support columns for the walkway around the outer arena edge as well.
Right, add actual light sources so we can see where all this light's coming from.
Right. In other words, at this point, we've got some working lights thrown in the scene, and we're not going in here properly lighting the scene right now, but we are going to add some static meshes, some light fixtures in.
Right. Okay, so first I'll grab the central lights, and we'll grab a static mesh from, let's see.
All right, let's see. So the central lights, let's see, humanoid hardware.
Which you probably already had open.
Up under miscellaneous.
Okay.
And it's going to be the J Spotlight.
Yeah, I was only one away from it.
Very good.
Also, you saw where I opened it up. I already had this package opened. If you need to select through all packages you already have opened, you can use this drop down, and it keeps a track of all the packages you currently have open. So if I was to go back one, and then bring it back to humanoid hardware, then I can go in under miscellaneous and grab that spotlight that I wanted.
Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and add 4 of those in real quick.
Okay. So with that selected, I can right-click on the top, add one of the spotlights. And let's see, the way I'm going to line these up is I'm going to have them towards the inside and facing their opposite pillar. Because the way I'm going to have the lighting in the end, it's going to be casting shadows out from the pillars, and then that kind of makes sense to have light shining at them from the inside. Let me go from a front view so I can see how these are lining up at top. So let me move it down just so it lines up with the ceiling. It wouldn't have to be perfect because it's a straight base on those. So just make sure that's not floating off the ceiling. So I've got the first one in place. Pretty happy with that. Right there. Now I can duplicate it. Move it back over. Center up the pivot. And move one over. Select both of them. Control W. Move them back. Place the pivot at the center. And then drag them around. So now I have 4 spotlights up at the top.
Very cool. All right, so now you want to go ahead and start adding all of our actual light fixtures that are found all the way around the arena itself, the walkways.
Right. We're going to add lights underneath each of these little supports that stick out from the wall. So for those, we're going to go and grab, let's see.
These are going to be the abandoned hardware.
Let me see if I already had that open or not. And
sure do.
From there, we'll
Up
grab
under lights. And it's going to be the A-Light 01AB.
Sounds good. So with that selected, I can right-click underneath one of those, add that light there, and there we go. Let me see if we need any special scaling on that. Find it first. So we've got it right over here.
Yeah, you just go ahead and pick something to scale it up.
Center that up. So I can around maybe 2.
Or probably even higher, maybe 4.
Yeah, 4 sounds good.
Yeah, that's more noticeable. Then we just rotate it.
Yep. So I'll grab that and simply rotate like such. So you want to move it out maybe a little. That's right. Right about there?
Yeah, maybe back in just a tad. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So with that, now we need 7 more to go all the way around this ring. So I'm going to make a group for the static mesh. Getting a little group happy, but in the end it helps.
Oh, absolutely.
So a new group, we'll call this, let's see.
Walkway lights. Okay.
Support lights.
Support lights.
And support lights, we'll go ahead and add that light to that group, and then begin duplicating. So let me try again, see if I can get away with that 16 grid. Duplicate it, center it back, and move its pivot to the center. Pivot, snap here, and then I can drag rotate and go back to the group, select all in that group, duplicate again, then move them back to center, and
And while Logan's just duplicating these all the way around, repeating the same process, if you guys haven't noticed by now, that's really what this arena here is all about. It's a really interesting looking map in the end, but it's really mostly about nothing more than a ton of duplications. And by using your groups efficiently, you can make this happen really, really fast.
All right. So let's see. Grab these. Grab the final 4 lights.
Look at that. While I'm talking here, he's already got it all wrapped up.
So there. Now we have a nice 8 lights all the way around. So we grab all 8.
Yep.
And we can duplicate those again and move them down a level. So with all those selected, I'll just go to my front view and we'll move all those straight down. Let me zoom in, make sure that they line up to the ceiling, and they're still lined up in the top view.
Excellent.
So with that, now we actually have the meshes for the lights under both supports.
Okay, I guess what we need to do at this point is just kind of look around. Is there anything else that you can think of that we have left off?
Well, we've got the lights for the central area. We should have all the meshes in place, our railings, our elevator, and everything.
Okay, so that's going to wrap up static meshes, at least for the inner part of the arena. And in the next lesson, what we'll do is we'll start adding in all of the static meshes for the outer part of the arena. So that concludes this lesson. Thanks.